You are listening to The Rant.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
You are listening.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that?
To The Rant.
I speak jive.
Oh, good.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it for 10 damn years. Ain't I been saying it, Miguel? Huh? I've been saying it.
You are listening to The Rant with David King.
Welcome to The Rant. I'm your host, David King. It is good to be here with you on this March 9th episode. Part 9 of the Walking Dead special. Here it is. Oh my goodness gracious. I am sorry it took so long, but good grief. It felt like it took forever just to get through season 9. Not because it was bad or anything. It was just I was having a hard time sitting down and watching it like more than one episode at a time. Or even really one episode for that matter. So it took me forever to get through 9. But yeah, so here we are. I'm really excited to be here. Really happy to be here with you guys. And fixing my audio because I'm not hearing myself very well. There we go. We got it fixed. So much has happened. There's a lot to get into, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it because there's a lot to talk about on this episode. This whole season, right? Season 9 is all over the place. Not necessarily all over the place. I shouldn't say that. Season 9 it's got a lot. It's got different kind of parts, but and there's a lot of little details. So it'll be somewhat difficult. It'll be difficult and challenging for me to cover everything, but I'll do my best. So pretty much this season kicks off long after the war with Negan. So we've had a significant amount of time in the sense of a few months, not necessarily anything more than that. We see Rick, the Hilltop, the Kingdom working together to gather necessary items to help the farm, to help them farm and to continue to survive. So they're kind of traveling what looks like to be in downtown Washington, D.C. We see that they finally must have run out of gas. It's only been like 9 years, and probably more than that technically because of some of the time periods and gaps. As they have now made makeshift horses and buggies out of small cars, which is clever. I don't hate this. I think it's really good. I like little things like this because it kind of is an interesting thing. It's an interesting kind of perspective or idea that these writers have, or people who create these stories, to see like what people would do in a situation where you no longer have the automobile. And so I like it. I thought it was pretty cool. It's clever. It's well done. It's believable. I kind of would have thought that these sort of things would have happened sooner, as gas would kind of start to become scarce and it would also go bad. And most people don't know that, I guess, but gasoline does go bad. It only has a certain amount of time on the shelf. And so I would have thought that all of that would have probably happened within the first 4 years or so of the apocalypse, but they were long into it, way long into it, and still had plenty of fuel. All three communities seem to be thriving at this point, and the group has set off to gather key items. Like I said a second ago, at it looks like they're at an old history museum in downtown Washington, D.C. And so, which is clever enough if anybody's knows, the building they were actually in was the capital of Georgia, the Capitol building rather, that they kind of shifted around and to make it look like like a old history museum, but that is actually the Georgia Capitol in downtown Atlanta. So fun little fact there. There's a little bit of action and drama here as we see like King Eziekle almost fall into a pit of zombies when the glass floor breaks. We also get to see that Carol and the King now have a relationship, and the King is interested in her hand in marriage. So, ooh la la. I didn't really see that one coming. To be honest, I don't really have much feeling about the King and Carol hooking up. I personally would rather see a relationship further develop between Daryl and Carol. But, you know, as I've kind of always felt like there was some kind of fire there, a little bit of a spark, some maybe even deeper love and caring for each other, more so than anything else. Especially, there's more of a relationship, in my opinion, between Carol and Daryl than there really was more obvious signs of a spark or something was there than even with Rick and Michonne. Like I went back and I remember some people saying like, oh yeah, I saw the whole Rick and Michonne thing coming a mile away. Like there was like, you know, signals and they had like kind of a, you know, like a little spark. And I thought to myself, I don't remember ever seeing anything that would make me believe that Rick and Michonne were going to hook up. And so I paid extra close attention, and I still never saw anything. No fireworks, no nothing, no chemistry. I mean, they certainly worked together. They were friends. They got along, but beyond that, I would never have thought that they were going to be in a relationship. Not mad about it. Don't care. It's just interesting that, you know, Daryl and Carol seem to be the ones that have the most chemistry with each other. And yet here they are. No, they're not in a relationship. You know, after all, they've kind of been together surviving from the very first episode of The Walking Dead in season 1. And Daryl was the one who, you know, risked his life looking for Sophia. And in that transformed into a very mature and stronger character who was loyal to the group, but able to think for himself instead of living, you know, in his brother's shadow, which is what he was kind of doing before. You know, Carol played witness to all of this. And in many ways, Carol's new inner strength and being a badass in herself in some part is because of Daryl as well. And Daryl becoming the reliable person he is now is Carol's doing too. So they've all had a kind of a hand in each other's character arcs. So these two are very much connected. And in that you would expect something kind of romantic to form from it because they've certainly kind of alluded to it, but they've never really gone with it. Daryl certainly cares for Carol probably more than anyone else, and maybe even Rick. Maybe Rick's a close second to that, but certainly more than anyone else, including Rick. I think time will tell on this. I feel like there's still time for those two to kind of walk off into the sunset together, you know, like live in the woods and start a family far away from the threats of the living and the dead. So I'm kind of maybe holding out for that, but we'll see. But that's basically episode 1 in a nutshell, really. It lays out the foundation of what's to come over the next couple of episodes and kind of sets the timetable where they're at, what's all going on. We get an insight of where Negan is. He's in a prison. He's in a jail cell, so he's kind of locked up. He's not a real threat. He's just kind of messing with Rick. You know, Rick talks to Negan and then gives him the down low, and then Negan kind of messes with him and tells him he's just getting the world ready for him. So Negan's still Negan at this point. We do know it's been months after the war. We know there is some time, a big gap, because Maggie has now had her baby, Herschel. But Maggie is still dealing with the problems of the past, though. She's still very upset about Negan being alive. She's not so sure about them working with the sanctuary. And she's also still dealing with Gregory. So Gregory decided at some point, arrogantly thinking that he would win, that the Hilltop should hold an election for its leader. After all, that makes sense, and fair enough. But the election was basically him against Maggie. He naturally lost by a landslide. And, you know, so he's pretty upset about that. And Gregory, being the weasel that he is, he only kind of gets worse this season. Unfortunately, the group ends up getting attacked while returning with supplies, and one of the young men from the Hilltop is bitten by a zombie trying to save some horses. This naturally upsets the parents of the young man back at Hilltop. They seem to air their grievances with Maggie quite a bit. And we get a little insight into how the locals are feeling about the Saviors hanging around and their people making what they perceive as probably unnecessary risks. Needless to say, though, the little weasel Gregory uses this moment to manipulate the father of the dead boy. Gregory knows that he had a drinking problem long in the past, and so he's going to play off of that and offers him a glass of tequila as they're mourning the death of his son after their funeral. They get drunk together, basically, and Gregory kind of conspires with him to take out Maggie for the betterment of the community. Needless to say, that plan ends up failing. Maggie stops both of them, and now Maggie is left with the hard decision. After all, she knows that this father was in mourning. He was drunk and is otherwise a pretty good man. She knows that he would normally not have done this had he had been sober, but he also happens to be the only blacksmith who's building the plows for the fields, and among other things. So remember, kids, make yourself unfireable in whatever job you take. This is a life lesson here. This man is the only blacksmith that they have. So remember, in real life, make yourself unfireable in this case, or uncancelable. Make it where they cannot cancel you, cannot fire you, cannot hurt you or do anything with you because you're just that damn necessary. Do this in whatever job you take and in life, period. Be so important that people can't cancel or fire you. That's what this guy has going for him. If he wasn't the only blacksmith, he would probably be in the gallows right next to Gregory. I think so, because he's not useful. And he tried to kill Maggie. But in this case, he is useful, and thus we must keep him alive. Yeah, he's a good guy. He has that going for him too. That does help. So he gets thrown in jail. Meanwhile, that leads me to this scene here. In the dead of night, Gregory sits on horseback with a rope around his neck, a noose. And Maggie has seemed to have had enough of him, and with good reason. This man has basically tested her and the others far, far, far too many times. Frankly, I'm surprised he's even allowed to walk around even before this little incident. He's turned his back on them far too many times, and this last one, he's actually tried to take Maggie's life. So he can no longer be trusted. He's no longer allowed to walk this earth. And really, frankly, there's really no better message to send to any group of people that if you break the rules, you're going to die. And who does that sound a little bit like, huh? If you break the rules, you're going to die. It kind of sounds a little bit like Negan. So in a weird way, we kind of have this parallel where Maggie is 100% Negan in this scene, but it does not make her wrong, for the record. Community the fact of the matter is she's 100% Negan. She's acting like Negan in this moment. She's dealing out swift justice in the form of taking somebody's life. They broke the rules. They tried to hurt somebody. In this case, it was her. And so that person's going to pay with their life. But she's not wrong. Just because she's acting like Negan here doesn't make her wrong. The community is far too young and too fragile to deal with a behavior like this in any manner anyway. Any manner that we would see in modern day society, like, for attempted murder, it's the gallows. That's where you go. These societies, these communities are too fragile to deal with that. They don't have the ability to handle basically mass amounts of crime. Negan showed us this when a man attempted to rape Sasha. It was an immediate death sentence. There's no time for that behavior right now, or ever really, for that matter. And they don't have the infrastructure for trials by jury or prisons. They don't have prisons to put people in, and people demand those prisons. So the show ends with Gregory dying. I was glad because that character was frankly annoying, and I was always kind of worried he was going to take someone out or do something stupid, which he did, and finally kind of get his up and comings for it. The next couple of episodes focus really primarily on all the communities coming together, including the sanctuary, to build a bridge that went out during a storm. This bridge would cut the travel time in half to the kingdom and sanctuary, and Rick felt it was really important. And really, the bridge is just a giant metaphor, if you will. I mean, that's really what this is. It's clever writing because the bridge is obviously meant to represent them bridging the gaps and coming together. And the things that happen around building this bridge kind of is representative of where the group or all these groups stand. It's to show the status of all the communities. Right now, they're all coming together, and so the bridge is being built that will connect them all. But unfortunately for Rick, that bridge build starts to kind of go sideways when saviors start to come up missing. It starts to turn to camp against one another as all of them accuse each other of wrongdoing. We later find out when Maggie and Daryl stumble upon the Oceanside group at an old holdout, primarily where Oceanside used to have their community. They have one of the saviors captured on her knees, and they're about to execute her. This is a very interesting scene because it paints a picture that I think we were all truly feeling. We kind of all were in the same boat as Oceanside when it comes to the situation at hand of why are these people allowed to walk this green earth after what they've done. This scene basically is where we learn that Oceanside was taking the saviors the entire time and killing them. They explain to Maggie and Daryl that these are the people that killed all the men and boys and that they must have justice. Fair enough. So Maggie, being the stone cold badass that she is, agrees and basically walks away. Maggie's team justice too. She hates the fact that Negan's still alive. So Oceanside takes out the last person responsible for killing their men. These first 3 or 4 episodes really dive deep into that struggle between the 4 communities trying to work with the saviors. I found it really interesting and actually enjoyed all of them greatly. In fact, the first 4 or 5 episodes of this season, I think, are some of the best episodes they certainly rank in the top 10 for me. These were very interesting episodes. They were fun to watch. It was entertaining. I thought it was well executed. It was great to see all these communities kind of interact. I felt it was an honest and real take into what it would be like trying to live and work with people you were once fighting. That's a pretty interesting thing to think about. And while I don't disagree with Rick keeping Negan alive and trying to get the people to work together, it isn't realistic in any way to believe that it would be possible. And I think the show really highlights that well here. These people did ugly and terrible things. Now most of the people that did the ugly and terrible things to Hilltop, Alexandria, and Kingdom all died during the war. That's something to keep in mind here. The people that really screwed with Alexandria, Hilltop, and Kingdom, they all kind of died. Simon, for instance, the other guy that was the one who took care of Kingdoms, I can't remember his name. He died. A lot of those people are all dead. But the people that committed the atrocities against Oceanside, well, they're still alive, and they're walking around among them. I mean, imagine if you would, that a group of people shows up to your family reunion and murders almost all of your family in cold blood, acting like they enjoyed every second of it, only later to see they didn't get charged, never sent to jail, but told you that they must now you must get along with them and now work together. That is impossible. There's no way anyone could do that. At best, you would leave and go far away from those people. And at worst, you would get your justice on them. You would essentially get your revenge. Even though it's really not revenge, it's holding them accountable for their actions to some degree. And that's basically what Oceanside was doing here. It was kind of a reckoning, if you will. Letting the people who murdered your husband's brothers and sons walk freely was a bridge too far for Oceanside, and yes, that pun was intended. This was Rick's biggest mistake, in my opinion. He locked up Negan, fair enough, that's good. But what about the others that committed war crimes? They must be held accountable too. Much like at the end of the World War II when the Nazis faced trials for what they did. Yeah, you got Hitler. But those other people must be held accountable too. By not charging Negan's lieutenants in what I would have called a regional court held among the 4 communities created undue tensions. The surviving saviors who were not responsible could have witnessed those people being charged, justice being served, and that all the communities could then move forward. Instead, you get Oceanside going behind everyone's back to dish out the justice, and it turns everyone against each other. Needless to say, the bridge does not get built, and the saviors walk off and go their separate ways. And so that is kind of the metaphor of this show. The bridge doesn't get built, and everyone starts to fall apart. Things fall apart even further as Rick's lookouts and Daryl kind of conspire against him because Maggie is now headed to go and kill Negan and get her justice. Rick thinks Daryl's going to help him and take him to Alexandria to stop her, but he doesn't, and instead he leads them away where they get into a scuffle and fall into a giant pit. It's interesting to note that Daryl and Rick really have never had a scuffle like this scene since probably season 1. They eventually crawl out of that little pit, and Rick kind of Rick and Daryl kind of have their moment and some exchange of words, but then they see a massive horde of walkers heading towards the bridge in Alexandria. Rick tells Daryl to head on as he will lead the walkers away. And this is where things kind of go bad for Rick. He ends up coming to a four-way, and there's a horde behind him and to the left, all descending upon him. The horse decides to freak out and buck him off. And keep in mind, this horse never freaks out or bucks him again later on. In fact, the horse walks, feet from the dead and doesn't seem to have a problem. But it does here, and unfortunately Rick falls and lands on rebar, which pierces his side. Now, I'm no expert, but that looked pretty close to his kidneys, and a puncture like that is usually a death sentence. If you don't get that wound closed up pretty quick, you'll bleed out very fast if that in fact was near his kidney. He was losing a tremendous amount of blood. In reality, he would have been a dead man the moment that rebar left his body. He would have bled out so fast. But he doesn't. Rick does manage to yank himself off of that rebar and get away, where we are treated to a bunch of hallucinations, which were pretty interesting. We get to see past characters like Shane, which was really a cool scene. I love that scene. And Herschel interacting with Rick as if it's kind of happening in real time. And so you kind of get an update with Shane. And you get a little update with Herschel as if it's, they're there in this actual time frame, but it's just a hallucination. This scene really kind of made me miss these characters a lot, to be honest. I really like Shane's character and how he was always kind of playing opposite Rick and really testing him. They bounced off each other, I think, really well. And so well that it always added an interesting tension to the show. Always felt like he was killed off. I always kind of felt like he was killed off maybe a little too soon. Like maybe he would have been good. It would have been interesting to see how Shane would have reacted with the governor in season 3. But alas, they took him out in 2. Nonetheless, I'm glad the character was in there because he was quite the enjoyable character. And Herschel, he was always the angel on Rick's shoulder, being his moral compass. We spoke about this in the past. Rick finding his inner monster, but able to tame it. Mainly, a lot of that is because of the people that he surrounded himself with. They kind of kept him in line. It kind of helped Rick to see things differently and keeping him on a straight and narrow path. If it wasn't for Herschel and maybe even Glenn, Rick likely could have become Shane, but maybe even worse, especially with everything that's happened since season 2 and 3 and all the things that these groups have been through. All this kind of comes to an end with Rick at the bridge and the walkers coming down on him. There isn't much he can really do, and he knows he has to stop them. The others kind of have to look on because they can't get to him. They're across the river. And they look on as he fires a single shot from his .357 Magnum Python at some explosives, taking out the bridge. And as we think at the moment, killing him and taking out the zombies as they all fall into the river. It's a pretty emotional kind of scene as we see Daryl look on in sorrow, losing his best friend, and Michonne screams out for him as she watches the man she loves and respects kind of die. I'm not sure if I felt the same emotions, but I've also already kind of saw this scene. In fact, this is actually where I ended my journey with The Walking Dead previously and stopped watching the show. I was getting really burned out on it, wasn't really enjoying it, was kind of thinking it was bad. After season 8, I was just kind of over it and done. And I had no interest in actually watching season 9, but then I heard the rumor about Andrew Lincoln separating from the show. And so naturally I was like, well, if he's going to, if he's leaving, I would like to see how they kind of write him off. So I got interested in it. So I watched those first. I don't even know if I watched all the first 4. I did. I watched all those episodes up until this point. And then after this episode, I stopped watching it because I'm like, okay, I figured out what happened. And, I kind of rolled my eyes. But anyway, so from this point on, after this episode, just for clarity, I have no idea what to expect or what is going to happen. I did not know what was going to happen after this episode, what characters were going to come into play, or how it was all going to go. Didn't have a clue, which was cool because now it's kind of fresh and new. I enjoyed rewatching all of these seasons prior, and In fact, I think that because I got to watch season 1 all the way to season 8 in one go, continuously without break, I do think it made it slightly more enjoyable. Now, that's not to say that I'm happy with the direction of the show, although I will say in season 9, I'm very happy with the direction of the show right now so far. These episodes have been very good. Kind of makes me feel like old Walking Dead, where it's not this over-the-top ridiculous kind of war that they're fighting. Season 8 was just simply so bad. And it still, to me, is one of the worst seasons of The Walking Dead. Season 8 was just atrocious. It was just so poorly done and written. I actually might fall back and do a special where I kind of rewrite season 8 in the way I think it should have been done and talk about it on the podcast. I don't know. If you guys are interested in that, you can kind of hit me up and let me know if you think that would be kind of fun to do. I've thought about doing that for other shows. I certainly wanted to. I've already kind of rewrote Star Wars, the new trilogy. Sorry, can't talk. I kind of rewrote those in a way that made more sense. It was more true to the Star Wars legacy. I kind of was thinking about putting it on paper. It's in my head. I just got to transfer it down on paper. And I thought about actually kind of going over it in the podcast and kind of seeing what people would think about that. If you're interested in seeing something like that, let me know, because I'd be happy to do it. It's not to say that I'm just some incredible story writer and I'm better than all these people, but there's just, in my mind, there's just ways I would think to do it better. I certainly don't know, like thinking about season 8, I don't know how, right off the top of my head, how I would have made it better, but there are some things I know for sure I would have changed. But season 8 was so bad. It was so poorly done. It was just very stale. And that's very unfortunate, because they, season 7, part of season 7 anyway. And it was all this kind of, well, actually I think it was all of season 7, if I remember. Yeah. So like season 7 is this kind of buildup to this war with Negan. And even to some degree, season 7 wasn't very good in and of itself either. Like, season 7, episode 1, I said was one of the best episodes of The Walking Dead, hands down. Ironically enough, it was one of the highest rated episodes of that season. We've already kind of talked about that, but, season 7 was kind of a weird letdown as well. But not nearly in my opinion, as bad as season 8. And I think a lot of people agreed with me, because the average score was about 7, I think, or even below 7. No, it would have been 7 stars, 7 out of 10 stars, which seems like not a bad number, but that's pretty bad for The Walking Dead. So yeah, I don't know off the top of my head what I would do to change it, but I'd love to put it on. I have things in my head that I would have done, that I could put on paper and we could talk about. If you're interested in it, let me know. And we can do it. I think it would be a lot of fun. But anywho, so I don't know. I didn't feel much emotion now, and I definitely didn't feel much emotion about it when I first saw the scene. But that was also because I was just so burned out on the show. The show had just, like I said, it just went so sideways, and I'm like, this show is just kind of dumb. I can't take it anymore. They've ruined it. They've ruined The Walking Dead. And to some degree, season 7 and season 8 ruined The Walking Dead, hands down. Like, and it's not because of Negan. Negan's one of the best characters as far as I'm concerned. He's top 5 best character of The Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Like, if I had to rate characters, my favorite, like, Daryl's number 1, hands down. Daryl's the best character in The Walking Dead. He outshines everybody. Daryl's great. I like the governor. The governor was a fantastic character. Shane's, I would say Daryl, Shane, governor. No, not even the governor. Like Daryl, Shane, Negan, governor. And then who would be my 5th in the top 5 of characters for me in this show? It probably could be Rick. I suppose Rick would be one of those characters. Yeah, I think Rick would be 5. I don't know anyone else that I would probably put there in 5. Maybe Maggie. I like Maggie quite a bit. Maggie's just hot though too. She's really hot. And that's probably one of the reasons why I like her so much. Other than that, she's just a pretty normal character. There's nothing really that stands out with Maggie too much, other than she's beautiful. Sorry, but yeah, like top 4, top 5, like that's it right there. Like you got Daryl, Shane, Negan, and the governor. And honestly, those 3 beyond Daryl could all change places. So the season, it's not Negan's fault that season was bad. It was just the way they wrote it and the way they played it all out was just really poorly done. It was very, like I said before, it was very stale. There was a lot of buildup with no payoff at all in those 2 seasons. A lot of filler, a lot of nonsense, a lot of situations where you wrote characters into circumstances that they probably shouldn't have been written into. You couldn't get them out of in a realistic way. And so at this point, I was just kind of fed up with it. I was done. And so I just think it was lost on me, and it might have been lost on so many other people. I don't really know. I would love to know. Did you feel any kind of real emotion when you first watched that scene and you saw that Rick Grimes was dead, or you thought he was dead when he blew himself up on the bridge? Obviously we know he doesn't die. At least we don't know long-term. We know he gets flown away. I'll touch on that in a minute. I'm not really sure anyone really felt shocked or emotional too much. I mean, seeing as we all kind of knew this season would be Andrew Lincoln's last, they announced it, which I think was a mistake. We all knew this character was going to be written off, and that sadly to me kind of ruined it all. It would have been nice if they could have kept that under wraps, but I understand why they didn't, because The Walking Dead, in terms of the comic, that is entirely about Rick Grimes. Like, he is the main character. The whole world circles around him. And so if you're taking him out of the story, you kind of have to let everybody know, like, hey, Rick's going away. Well, so the show's going to end? No, the show's going to keep going. Well, how's that going to work? Well, we're just going to kind of make it up as we go. But anyway, Rick's gone, or so we think. Later on, though, Jadis just happens to be nearby when she sees the explosion and finds Rick on the riverbank, actually probably 50 feet from her. What are the odds of that? Whatever. Of all the places she managed to be right where Rick was when he got washed down the river. We still have absolutely no idea who Jadis, whatever the hell the trash people leader, Jadis, is communicating with. We don't know who these people are. We know that they have a helicopter. They seem to have medical services because they were able to take care of Rick, and they're searching for maybe certain types of people. They need an A or a B. I assume A is somebody who's a good person, that's valuable. And I think a B is someone who's bit, someone who's infected, possibly. I don't know. But that's kind of what I took from watching her kind of deal with Gabriel. And she said, this whole time I thought you were an A or a B or something like that. None of it makes any sense. So we don't know really much about these people. We don't know who they are. And sadly, this season, we're not going to get any answers on any of that. So if you think you're going to find out later on that we're going to get told, we're going to get some clarity on who these people were, you're not. I don't know if we will later. But the fact that that a 16 episode season pays no mention to the disappearance of Jadis or the helicopter makes me think that we're not going to get any information on it. And this was just a convenient way to write Rick off without killing him. I'm sure they want to leave. It's probably clever to some degree that the writers were like, hey, if we don't kill Rick off and he gets flown away, that might make people stay interested because they think, hey, maybe Rick's going to come back later on. I have no reason to believe that he will, but maybe he will. I don't know. That's certainly not while I'm watching the show still. I'm watching the show still because I'm doing a special on it, but even then, I'd still just watch it anyway. Again, I have no idea what happens after this, so I'm still in the dark. But I will say I actually am enjoying this season up to this point for sure. And it sparked a bit of interest in the show again. I felt myself actually enjoying it, wanting to watch the next episode, having a hard time turning it off and not binging 2 or 3 or 4 episodes at a time. So I was looking forward to the next episode and the rest of the season, to be completely honest. Rick's gone. I'm like, okay, let's see how this show goes. I'm actually very interested to see what direction it goes in. And that was really until I watched that episode. And I'm going to get into that here in a minute. So suddenly now we are flashed forward in time. a decent amount of time at that, as we see a much older Judith who just now rescued a group of people being attacked by walkers. Judith is probably close to, I would say, maybe 10 years old. I don't know. I am a really bad judge of age. I have no idea. Like someone's kid comes up, I don't know how old they are. I have no idea. And when I guess, I'm way off. And Kate makes fun of me for it, and rightfully so, because I should know better, but I have no idea. I'm assuming she's 10. She's not a teenager. We know that. She's very much a child, but she's older than what she was. So it's hard to know. I don't know. Maybe they mentioned it and I missed it, but she's old enough now to start carrying her own weight. That's for sure. And she certainly does. She somehow manages to carry and use Rick's old Python 357 Magnum. The sentiment isn't lost on me here. I get it as she's kind of as she's donning the sheriff hat and wielding her dad's Magnum. I get it's kind of cool. But the reality is that thing would be pretty heavy for her to hold up and hold out and shoot it. And then the recoil on that 357 would kick back so hard in her face, if not just fly right out of her hands. There's no way a girl that size would be able to fire that Magnum, and certainly not fire it in such a way that's accurate from the distance that she fired it from. I'm being nitpicky here. I get it. It's a show. It's not real, but it's like, come on. In a way, it's like, if you want the nostalgia of the sheriff hat and the Magnum, why don't just make Judith older? Make her like a badass, make her more of an adolescent or an adult, make her like kind of like a cowgirl. She's got the hat, she's got the revolver, but she can pull it out and swing it and shoots it, like you could, in theory, you could have that sort of kind of Clint Eastwood like character, spaghetti Western style character there, where she's now this badass. She's been living in the world forever. She can shoot this thing with no problem. She even draws it really quick, but whatever. This is what they chose to do. And again, I'm not mad at this because I really actually like this version of Judith. I think she's a great character. She's not over the top like most child characters are today. For instance, like young Leia in Kenobi that comes to mind. If you ever notice, like if I have a problem with certain things in movies today, I generally go right to Kenobi, because Kenobi literally checked all the boxes of everything that freaking annoys me with Hollywood today. And young Leia's character certainly got on my nerves so bad. So Judith is not like that at all. She's smart, but she's not smarter than her age would allow. That's the beauty of it. And she has her spunk, but she's still respectful to her elders. So she is kind of witty as you would expect a child to be. Like, it's a normal, natural amount. Like, children, there are sassy kids out there, but they're not smarter than you, because there's no way they could be. They don't know everything. And their sass only goes so far. But she's also still respectful to those who are older than her. She doesn't seem to know everything, and her character doesn't make the adults feel stupid, which is much like what Leia and so many other child characters do today. They seem to outmatch the adults, which doesn't feel natural. She's brave and adventurous, which you would expect her to be, since she's kind of grown up in this new world. But she's also very vulnerable, as you expect a child to be. She's kind of capable of helping herself to a point, but she still relies heavily on the adults around her. And also, she's just the spitting image of Shane. I love that part. I love that we don't really know, but we kind of know that that's not Rick's baby. Anyway, all in all, she's been a very good character, and she's a good character all season 9. Very well written, not over the top, seems to be pretty well balanced out. Now, keep in mind, I have to keep reminding myself that this show came out in 2018. So this was kind of before Hollywood started really taking a nosedive, and, for the lack of a better term, they kind of went woke and they started writing characters a certain way, and it's not been good. I probably will do a special on that here very soon. The problem with modern day Hollywood movies. But anyway, and so here we are as Judith introduces herself to these new people and takes them back to safety. We see and learn all kinds of new things in this episode, like Carol has long and gray hair now. Michonne looks the exact same age, but just shaved a little of her hair off and on one side. And she also has this major chip on her shoulder towards everybody. She's very angry, very almost highly reactive to everything. It's very strange. It's not like Michonne at all. This part is a little strange because the show doesn't really explain for a while, almost toward the end of the show, the season rather, why none of the three communities are talking to each other, or at least not very much. We don't really get an explanation for Michonne's behavior. You think at first it's like, oh, it's because Rick's dead. It's like, yeah, but it's been like several years. Why would you be acting like this? This doesn't make any sense. Why are you not talking to the people that you have kind of survived with for so many years? Why are you alienating yourself from them? And we don't really get an answer to that. And even the answer we do get still doesn't really make a whole lot of sense as to why she's acting that way. There's really just no explanation as to why ever, as far as I could see. Unless I missed it, I did not see a really good explanation as to why Michonne and everybody wasn't talking anymore. Why there seemed to be some sort of separation. They were going to sign a charter. They were going to come together and be, like states working with one another. And now suddenly they're not. Why? It couldn't be because Rick died. That's not Rick's vision. I mean, I get Michonne's chip on her shoulder a little bit because of an old friend betraying her and almost got her killed along with Judith. But again, why the beef with the other communities? Why wasn't her and Maggie talking? Where the hell did Maggie go? And why did she go? We don't know. There's none of these things are really told to us until very, very much later, like far off into the show. Instead, they just seem to have wrote off Maggie and just said she took Herschel and went off to another community, or went off to find another community or other communities. This is a weird thing to me. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if Maggie just needed time away. I don't know if Lauren Cohen needed time away from the show or something. My wife told me that they had written her off because she was tired of being on the show. Maybe that's the case. I'm not entirely sure. And if that is true, that's, fair enough. I mean, Andrew Lincoln was certainly tired of being on the show. I know he said he wanted to be with his family, but the reality is he's just seen the writing on the wall and he knows where the show's going. He's done. He's ready to hang up his hat and move on. Season 7 and 8 literally probably did that to him. He's like, I've had enough of this. This show's starting to go to shit. He's probably not enjoying working with the production staff and the directors and the writers anymore. And so he's ready to move on. He probably didn't say that because you wouldn't say that because you don't want to burn bridges and ruin your career. But I'm pretty sure that's what he is. Now, again, I'm speculating. I don't know. I have no reason to believe that that's the reason why he ended up leaving. We have every reason to believe that he left because he truly wanted to spend time with his family more. Maybe that is it. Fair enough. But I don't think that's the case. I just don't see that. Like, you wouldn't leave. No actor would leave a show in its prime just because they want to spend more time with their family. Unless they thought this show's no longer in its prime and it's only going to get worse from here, and I might as well go now while it's still hot. I don't know. Or maybe he was worried that he was going to get typecasted. I've been doing The Walking Dead so long that if I keep doing it, I'm going to be like, Mark Hamill, and I'll never get a gig anywhere else because everyone's going to just see me as, Rick Grimes. And fair enough, that might be the case. Who knows? But either way, he's gone. Maggie's now gone. We don't really know why. She had no reason to leave. Let's assume she's not written off the show because she wanted to go. So then why would she be gone? She was the leader of Hilltop. She was a damn good one at that. She had everything she needed there. Doctors and all that, security. Why would she suddenly take her child, Herschel, who's a baby, who's an infant? Well, I guess in this case, he wouldn't be an infant anymore. He'd probably be like 5 or 6 years old. I don't know how many years it spanned. I'm trying to do the math there because I don't know how old Judith was before. But let's just assume 4 or 5 years. So he's a little older now. But still, why would you risk that? You have everything you need here. You fought for this. Like, you fought for Hilltop. You risked your life to build this community and to have that security. So why would you just up and leave and risk your son's life going out there in the middle of nowhere, not knowing what you're going to find? You could certainly run right into another Neagan 2.0. You don't know that. But she did, so she's gone. Why? Don't know. Have no idea. But whatever, show. It's just, ugh. It's frustrating. It's irritating because it doesn't make sense, and I hate that. Especially with the first 4 or 5 episodes, they were going so well. And now we have all this crap that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it's not being explained. I don't like I don't like characters acting out of character, or I don't like, okay, you can do like time jumps in the middle of a season. That's probably fine. But the problem is if you skip ahead 4 or 5 years, 10 years, 8 years, whatever amount of time, and in the episode prior, everyone's getting along and talking. Obviously the saviors weren't, but everybody else was fine. But now 4 or 5 years later, everyone's just kind of gone off into their own corner, and they're not really communicating. And for instance, Maggie and Michonne don't talk. Why? What happened? And if you don't explain that in a timely manner, it just becomes confusing. See, the problem is they never tell us why Michonne and Maggie stopped talking. It wasn't because she tried to stop him from killing Negan, because Maggie voluntarily didn't kill Negan because she saw him as a broken man. And they had a moment. So what was it? Did I miss something? I'm telling you, like, this first episode had me so damn confused. I thought, did I miss an episode? Did it skip ahead? That's how confused I was when I was watching this. That's not good writing. Your viewers should never be that confused as to what the hell is going on, because people are acting so erratically different with no explanation as to why, or characters are missing with no real explanation as to why. And so it's beyond frustrating. But this is what The Walking Dead does. They give you a banger of an episode, like episode 1 of season 7, and then from there they give you absolute ridiculous garbage in episode 2. And it's frustrating. But whatever. Moving on. Daryl's living in the woods. We know that. So Daryl's living in the woods alone, and he's kind of made a companion and a dog, which is cool. His name is Dog, which is funny. It's just such a like kind of a redneck thing, like Southern thing to do, because there's a lot of people on my wife's side of the family, old school Southern farmers that just the pet's name is Dog, right? Or the donkey's name is Jack. Because why? Because it's a jackass. It's a donkey, and so it's just what they do, and I love it. It's like it's a great thing. To me, it's the most Daryl move of the show. Period. To name his dog Dog and have a dog as a companion. Anyway, he's been out searching for Rick's body for the longest time, but of course has not found him. That's pretty serious dedication to be out there for that many years, not finding him, but still looking. He gives up though now and heads back to the hilltop at Carol's request to look after her boy, Henry, while he apprentices to be a blacksmith. Needless to say, that kid won't be doing much blacksmithing, as he ends up in jail after getting drunk and sneaking out with some other kids. And he also gets into some other tomfoolery. So Michonne is kind of wrangling with herself whether or not this new group can be trusted, the people that Judith brought back, but settles to take them to Hillside, something that made really no sense to me at all. If you don't trust them, why give them to your friends? And if you do trust them, why not let them stay in Alexandria? I guess the show needed an excuse to get Michonne back at Hilltop to learn that Maggie's gone and Jesus is in charge, and kind of reunite everyone again, or to show the tension between people, like show the tension between Michonne and Kara. Is it Kara? What the hell's her name? I should know by now. Good Lord. What's wrong with me? It's Tara. Yes, Tara. Show some tension between Michonne and Tara. Why is there tension? Don't know. Never get an explanation. Again, why was she avoiding Maggie in the hilltop doesn't make any sense. And it annoys me that it's not explained. It's just everybody's mad at it. Everyone's kind of, distant from each other, and you have no idea why. And the whole time you're thinking, what did I miss? Did I miss something? Do I need to go back and rewatch it? But no. Jesus is sneaking out of the hilltop to get away from being a leader. He hates it. And he is found hanging out with Aaron. They're eating lunch now, and they were training each other on how to fight. I guess they're developing a sort of relationship, but we never really see anything more than them just kind of sparring and eating a meal together. They kind of chat about their communities. You can clearly tell that the communities aren't communicating because Jesus and Aaron are kind of talking about what's going on amongst each other's communities in kind of secret. But eventually they stumble across Rosita, who happens to be knocked out. She's basically passed out, so they rush her back to Hilltop and find out that Eugene is still out there as well. They send out a rescue party to find him, and that's when the show goes from pretty damn good, slightly frustrating, to what is an absolute, what in the absolute hell am I watching at this? What am I seeing? We heard voices talking, whispering, when Rosita and Eugene were hiding from the walkers. And that's a bit ominous. You're kind of sitting there going, wait a minute, where are those voices coming from? Why do they sound like why does that seem like the zombies are talking? But anywho, fast forward to the rescue group that went out to look for Eugene finds him. They find him in a barn. And he tells them that these walkers have evolved. And they all kind of argue amongst each other, is that even possible? He says they can now talk and they can now track you. And they have been following him up until this point. Evolved zombies? For the love of goodness, what the hell? Oh my gosh. I'm actually glad it's not really evolved zombies. Although I would say that would be a page out of Romero's book with, I think it was Land of the Dead. He did that, where the zombies kind of evolved into, they were getting back muscle memory things. They were doing things that they used to do in the past. And it was a stupid premise. It didn't land. I didn't like it. And a lot of the people who I watched that movie with and have seen it don't like that premise. So the fact that they're talking about evolved zombies, I'm like, oh Lord, rolling my eyes. Needless to say, those evolved zombies are now outside the barn. They're all in, and it's time to get on the move. They try the usual distraction tactics to pull the herd away from Eugene, Jesus, and Aaron, who are on the run, but it doesn't work. And that's when Daryl realizes something is actually up here. He's like, these guys are acting peculiar. He said they get chased into a foggy cemetery where they make a stand against the zombies. They manage to fight most of them off and get a gate open to escape. Jesus tells them to go a while he tells them to go while he covers them. And we see a slow-mo action scene where Jesus is kung fu kicking his way through the herd until one of the zombies suddenly stabs him and kills him. Oh my. They're not evolved zombies at all. They're people dressed up like zombies. What the hell? I mean, okay. What in the world is this nonsense? Who the hell approved this? Okay. Who probably, I'd imagine, was the same guy that approved the CGI tiger. Let me just start by saying that this new enemy is probably the dumbest and worst of all the enemies that Rick's group's ever had to face. I say Rick's group because that's who it is. It's Rick's group. Rick's gone, but that's the best way to describe it. This is the absolute dumbest enemy. It's worse than the wolves. Worse than the cannibal people. All those enemies weren't even bad, but this one's dumb. This is straight stupid. Just when this season was turning out to be really good, they kind of go and pull this crap on me. To me, it's too much. It's too impractical, too unrealistic. The idea that these are people dressed up like the dead, walking with the dead, as if this is some sort of survival tactic, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, for instance, how do they eat? What do you eat? How do you eat? Do you just walk around with the dead all day? Do you take breaks? Is there turns? Do you kind of go off and sit for a little bit, then go back to it? Does your back start to hurt after being hunched over like that all the time? Do you enjoy the smell of these dead people's faces when you're wearing them? What in the actual Hannibal Lecter shit am I watching? I remember going on a long-winded rant to my wife after this episode dropped, and I saw these masked pretend dead people. And I went on like this huge rant about how this is impractical. Like 3 ways the sun way, upside down, left, right. In so many ways, it's just ridiculous, unbelievable, impractical from a tactical and survival situation. Like nobody would ever do this. First off, you look like and act like the very thing every living person is actively killing. So if you stumble across anyone with firearms, well, you're screwed. You're dead. If you break character for even a second, the actual dead that you're walking with will turn on you and eat you. We know this because when the other guys would cover themselves in guts, if those guts started, even with the guts spread all over them, if they broke out, if they didn't stop just being quiet and mumbling along with the dead would come after them. They would realize, oh, this guy's alive. It's dumb. It's too much. It's way over the top. It's no way in any world is this believable. Explain the believability. Listen, here's the thing. I know what you're saying. David, it's a show about zombies. It's not real. Lighten up. And you're not wrong. It is a show about zombies. It's sci-fi. It's not real. But here's the thing about The Walking Dead. And this is one of the things that I think, like I've said in the past, I said this probably I'm sure I touched on it in the first episode of this special. It's one of the things that was unique to The Walking Dead is that it made it believable. It made it feel like a world that could actually happen. The characters were very real, very relatable, and it made everything very interesting. It's one of the reasons why so many people got sucked into The Walking Dead. Nothing zombie related has ever attracted this large of a following. The Walking Dead became like this cult, like not even a cult, like everybody loved The Walking Dead. My mother loved The Walking Dead. Really? My mom was obsessed with it when it first came out. She loved it. My wife loved The Walking Dead when it first came out. That's unbelievable. And that's because of the world that they built. It made it feel very real, very believable, very intriguing, relatable. You found yourself asking, what would you do in many of these situations? And that was that was like the hallmark of this show. And they've gotten away from that since season 7. Negan's very believable. The Saviors were very believable. But the Tiger and the Kingdom, these over-the-top characters, they're just not believable. And now we have people dressing up like zombies and walking along and living amongst the dead. Like that, in what world would that make sense? You are setting yourself up for failure by doing that. In no world would you be a threat to anyone. You'd be more of a threat to yourself. And the show actually makes my point later on, laughably enough. Like I went on that long-winded rant with Kate and just was thinking to myself, like how terrible this is and how you would just die. Like you would either get killed by the living or killed by the dead. You wouldn't survive. You'd be on borrowed time doing that. And the show makes my point like to the T, like, which is strange because you would think that the show wouldn't do that because it kind of points out the flaws in the writing, but here they do it. The show makes my point when Daryl and Michonne are trapped some of these people on the bridge. Instead of shotting them like shooting them in the head like Daryl would normally do, Daryl just hits them in the leg with his crossbow. So naturally he finds a living one and he screams immediately when he, gets hit with this arrow, and he starts immediately being eaten by the dead next to him. Talk about an epic fail. They end up killing all the dead and the living dead people on that bridge except one who's living and falls to their knees and gives up. And it turns out to be a young woman. Oh boy. So they haul her back to the hilltop to interrogate her and hold her. They don't get much of any truth from her. We get a little backstory on the girl. We do get a little bit of a backstory on the girl and how the kind of the group started. Turns out her mother is an evil, abusive human being and was that way long before the dead started walking. So needless to say, this girl has some pretty heavy baggage, but for some reason, Henry just absolutely loves her. And listen, take it from me, kid. You don't want to date emo girls, okay? It never works out well in the end. Trust me. I may or may not be speaking from experience. Eventually, they get some kind of truth out of her, though. But wouldn't you know it? Look who shows up at the gates of Hilltop. It's the girl's mother and her little army of pretend dead people. At first, you might be thinking they will say trick or treat, but no, they make some threats toward the Hilltop, which is laughable considering these deadheads have no firepower whatsoever. They're just standing there with essentially knives. There's about 20 of them, maybe. Instead of just blowing them away and ending this, Daryl decides to make the trade because there's a baby amongst the dead heads. Whatever. It's stupid. Again, this is just like season 8 and season 7. You have written characters into a situation where there's realistically only one outcome. The deadhead people, the pretend dead people would have been completely torn down in that circumstance. They have no bargaining chips, no power. Hilltop has all the firepower, all the people they need, and they would easily take all of them out and end it right there. It'd be done. This is just like the scene where Rick is pointing a rifle at Negan's skull in episode 1 of season 8. Like, pull the trigger, dude. End it. War's over, boys. Go home. But he doesn't. And that makes it very laughable, makes it cheesy, doesn't make it believable, doesn't make for good storytelling. You don't put your characters in those situations because there's really only one outcome. So they don't do that. They just give the girl back. And which, by the way, what happened to all the damn guns? Did they just disappear? What happened to the infinite ammo cheat code that they had simply unlocked in season 8? Did that die with Rick? I mean, Eugene is a bullet maker. These people should be armed to the teeth with that many years of peace and time to make ammo, if you think about it. But no, just bows and arrows, which makes, again, absolutely no sense. I guess the script needed that since they'd make pretty quick work of these pretend zombies if they still had all their guns. There's no doubt in my mind. Judith, though, she still has a gun. She has bullets too, apparently. Apparently 357 ammo is plentiful in the zombie apocalypse. I love the thing. Again, this is the problem with episode 7 and 8. We're going back. This show conveniently brings in ammo, gas, and timely turn rates when the plot needs it to move along. Carl, he gets the award for the longest turn rate of like 5 or 6 days. He took how long to turn when he got bit? Check that kid's blood. Maybe he has some antibodies or some shit. Call Dr. Fauci or Pfizer. Get in on that. But that's what this show does. It's like, it's always convenient. They have guns when they need guns. They have all the ammo they need when they need it. The gas when they need it. People turn at a rate that helps the plot or helps the story. It's never consistent. It's all over the place. But anyway, this entire scene, like I said, it's stupid. It's a horrible scene because even without guns, they have walls, they have arrows, they got the numbers, they got everything. They have the upper advantage. They have no reason to bow to this person at all. There's no reason to negotiate with these idiots at all. But they give the daughter back for the other 2 captors that they had. You could say, well, Dave, they had 2 captors. They had to negotiate. They could have killed them. No, you really don't. You could literally say, you can kill them, and then we're literally going to cut you all down. So you have the choice. And the fact that they know, here's another thing. Daryl and all these people know there's a secret escape hatch now at the wall because they found that out with Henry. And Daryl uses it to rescue the girl in the cornfield. So why is it that they didn't send a group of people out of that secret passageway around outside and flank these guys and then say, listen, We got you from here and we got you from the back. You're screwed. Drop your weapons. Give us our captors back. You're done. It would have been over like that in a heartbeat. And it's believable. That is very believable that could have happened. But it doesn't happen. Instead, they caved to these people for no good reason whatsoever. And it's frustrating. It doesn't make sense. So it's a frustrating scene. It's stupid. It's really bad. So they get everybody back. Everybody exchanges and everyone goes on their merry way. Henry, though, he isn't having it. He is absolutely madly in love with this girl. And by golly, he's going to go after her and save her life. Henry is about as useless as he was when he was a kid. He makes the same damn irrational decisions like last season, and he is still completely useless with his little stick. Morgan, he whooped ass with that stick, hands down, taking down full-size men, no problem. Henry, no, he just gets beat up. Henry gets his ass kicked all the time. If I were Henry, I'd probably ditch the stick and probably pick a different weapon, personally, after losing that many times. But, hey, I guess maybe he'll get better at it one day. But now he's captured, and Daryl has to go out and find him. Because Daryl is the smartest character in the story, he takes a page out of the Deadhead's book and dons a zombie mask, sneaks in and takes the two lovebirds away. They sneak off. And Daryl then has to kind of stage a last stand sort of fight in a building where he is met by Beta, a giant man played by none other than Ryan Hurst, which I thought was very interesting. If you don't know who Ryan Hurst is, he's a damn good actor. Too good for this role, in my opinion. It's a very strange role for him. If you're going to get someone like Ryan Hurst on your show, you're going to want to utilize him. He should be alpha, not a beta, as far as I'm concerned. But I get it. Like, you'd probably have to rewrite alpha if that was the case. Ryan Hurst is just too good of an actor to be sidelined and make, to be what I would say B-level character at this point. He kind of progresses a little bit to this point. He's less sidelined and he's kind of getting more into the fold, but he's too good of an actor to do that. He starred as, if you don't know who Ryan Hurst is, he starred as Opie in Sons of Anarchy. He also starred in the movies like Remember the Titans. I think he was a defensive end or offensive lineman or something like that. And Remember the Titans. He's the guy that gets hit by a car and ends up dying at the end of the show. If you haven't seen Remember the Titans, sorry, spoiler. But he's a great actor. And he's actually a really big dude too, like very tall. And he shows that in the show. He plays a pretty strong and powerful character. And it was fun to watch him and Daryl fight. Like, I actually enjoyed that fight. I like his character's kind of like this brute. Beta's just like punching through walls and just kind of kicking ass. I like it. I actually like this Beta character. I don't hate him per se. I don't like the idea that he's walking around with a dead mask on and everything. But I do like how he's kind of strong and big and fights pretty well. And it was fun to watch him and Daryl kind of duke it out. But Daryl does get the best of him and shoves him down an elevator shaft. Now, he should be dead. Okay, a fall like that, because that's what happens when you fall that far and land on a solid piece of steel. Okay, and not only just a solid piece of steel, but it's a solid piece of steel that's not flat. Like, it's got ribs. It's got up like bars sticking out of it. So when you fall, you're not going to fall flat. Like, you're going to fall and hit like these joists, this framing of the elevator. And that's going to break bones, man. At best, you're broken ribs. You're not doing good. Broken spine. You might still be alive, but you're not getting up from that. But he managed to not only live, but get up and walk away like everything is fine. Whatever. It's stop doing this, Walking Dead. Stop it. Stop putting your characters in unrealistic and inescapable situations. If Beta is not to die, then don't have him push down an elevator shaft. Find a different way for Daryl to escape that's more believable. And you push him down an elevator shaft. Well, David, we want you to think he was dead because he fell down an elevator shaft. That's because he would be dead if he fell down an elevator shaft. Any realistic person, any man or woman who fell that length and hit that elevator the way he did, there was blood coming from his head. He'd be hemorrhaging blood right now. His brain would be hemorrhaging. He wouldn't be getting up and grunting and then crawling his way out of there. He'd be lucky if his spine wasn't broken. It's freaking stupid. This whole season went from being really good to being really freaking stupid. Damn you, Walking Dead. Seriously, what the hell are you doing? Stop being dumb. You've had some, I swear, this is like the people that took over Star Wars. Like you were handed like the best idea in the world with the best characters. And all you really had to do is hit play and just like execute it. And you couldn't. You just screwed it up. And you screwed it up so bad, it's like beyond screwing up. It's not, there's like no words that I could use to describe how badly you screwed up Star Wars. And I cannot use enough words to describe how badly you're screwing up this show. Beta could have died. Fine. Oh, but it's Ryan Hurst and we don't want to waste that character. Great. Then don't have him get pushed down an elevator shaft. Stop doing this. Enough. Even with all that being said, I'm mildly enjoying this season at this point. Like I'm not entirely mad at what I'm watching, but I am mad at all these little dumb things that they keep putting in the show. It really makes it hard at times to enjoy it because you just laugh and go, what the hell are we doing? Anyway, I'm going to move on. Rant over. They get away. Of course, they get away. And now we're going to flash forward to the fair because there's a lot of nonsense that goes on in between all that. It's not important, but now we're at the fair. And all the communities have come together to celebrate and do trade. All is going well, except somehow Alpha, the female from the Deadheads, managed to sneak in disguised as a normal person. By the way, could that be any more like screwed up by the show to like show this man and woman having anniversary after anniversary and getting gifts and they're happy-go-lucky and now they're going to go to the fair and trade and get a new anniversary gift and they get killed by Alpha. It's like, damn, that's messed up. I know what you did there. You didn't have to write it that way. That's screwed up. But anyway, that's what happens. She Hannibal Lecter's the girl. At first, I thought she was wearing a woman's face, which would have been a bridge too far for me. I would be like, that's it. This show's gone too far. There's no way anyone could have done that. But I guess she just cut her hair off and donned it as a wig. Whatever. I lost my train of thought because this show's frustrating. She does some recon. So Alpha's in there. She snuck in. She's doing some recon on the place, and she eventually finds her daughter later on in the movie theater. Her daughter basically tells her to screw off, and then the mother tells her that she's weak and leaves. Now we think that's all that happens, but turns out she captured a bunch of people from the hilltop who were on their way back from the fair. Daryl, Carol, and some others go out looking for them, but are quickly captured by the stupid pretend dressed up people. The woods are dead quiet, of course, until the walkers were literally right up on them. But go figure, these people were able to sneak up in masses. This is the thing. Another thing about The Walking Dead that's frustrating. Zombies are dead silent until they are literally right on you. And then there's times where they're not dead silent. Like that they can hear them. They're 20 or 30 feet away. Again, this is one of those convenient things where the zombies are loud when they need to be, or dead silent quiet, like stealth quiet when the show needs them to be. And I don't know. Here's the thing. I get it because to a degree, zombies are not that, they're not that deadly. And so after a while, you're kind of like, well, they've got all these weapons and they've been fighting the zombies for so long. They've kind of got it all figured out, and zombies really aren't that lethal anymore. And they can hear them coming from a mile away, which you would. Like if you were walking in the woods, you'd hear a zombie stumbling through there. He'd be falling and tripping over everything and breaking twigs. You may not know it's a zombie at first, but you're going to hear them coming, especially that many. Like they got overrun quick. And then, of course, by the time they've killed all the actual zombies, they're now surrounded by the deadhead people, and now they can't do anything but drop their weapons. It's like, you didn't hear any of this? It was literally crickets And now all of these people just suddenly moved up on you like that without you knowing? Come on, man. It's such bull. Needless to say, though, Alpha takes Daryl away to show him a very large horde of zombies that she has under her control, and tells Daryl that if people cross into their territory, she will unleash them towards his people. She lets Daryl go along with Michonne and or I think Michonne was there. Carol was definitely there. So they get let go. Alpha kind of tells Daryl that you stay on your side of the line and I'll stay in my territory. If anybody crosses into my territory, it'll be war. And she'll unleash those dead people, blah, blah, blah. And so he lets them go. And the others in the field, they're all in a field now where they see the markers for that boundary line. And those markers are a bunch of stakes in the ground. And sitting upon those stakes are the heads of the captured hilltop people. Sadly, we see many characters like the people who are guarding the road, which here's the thing. The characters that they found guarding the road and then kind of recruited to keep guarding those roads, those were quite interesting characters. I would have liked to have seen that guy survive and then utilize him in a way because he was quite interesting. But they kill him. He's dead. But then we see something more, and this was a bit shocking. We see Tara and Enid's head, and then Henry's. Henry, you see what happens when you fall in love with a woman with so much baggage? Mm-hmm. Don't say I didn't warn you, buddy. Needless to say, I wasn't expecting that at all, especially not Tara or Enid. I never would have thought that those two would have been killed off. They were such prominent characters. Tara especially, she's been along since the prison. Since the governor, kind of part 2 of the governor, really, but she's been around for a while. It's a very important character. She took over for Jesus after Jesus was killed. So I didn't expect her to die. It was pretty shocking and kind of a sad ending to that episode. It was a very big kind of shock. It had a big shock value. You would think that would be the way the season would end, but there was still one episode left. And so we kind of go fast forward a little bit, maybe a couple of weeks or so. The kingdom now is basically falling apart, which is kind of what the show started off as. So if we remember Henry was kind of maintaining the kingdom and he was struggling to keep it going because the pipes and everything were starting to break. Well, Henry's dead now, so there's nobody really maintaining it or even able to for that matter because he never completed his training and nobody else did. And so the kingdom's falling apart and it's now beyond repair. I like this a lot because it's realistic. Most of our buildings would not last very long without general maintenance, especially commercial buildings with that sort of specialized plumbing. And they don't have the supplies or the know-how to really keep these things up and running. So eventually they will break down and fall apart. Carol and the king are also clearly in disarray after losing Henry. And it would seem their marriage is now a bit shaky. The king even asks Daryl at one point while they're out on their trek to kind of disappear for a while once they get to Hilltop so he can spend time with Carol and try to piece things back together. It would kind of seem like the king might be suspicious of Carol and Daryl's relationship, or at least be kind of maybe jealous of Daryl or worried about Daryl. But anyway, the king and everyone do set off. They set off for the Hilltop, but they're cut off by a nasty blizzard and must seek shelter nearby at the abandoned sanctuary. Interesting thing to note here, kind of a bit of trivia, if you will. This episode actually marks the first time in this series that snow has been present. In fact, this is actually one of the first episodes in the season where they're clearly in winter. You may think that it's fall or spring, but this show's usually set in the summertime. It's usually hot because that's when they film it. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. But this is the first time in the series that snow has been present. Chief Content Officer Scott Gimble expressed his excitement about this as it is something that he wanted to do for years. Back in season 2's 18 Miles Out, Shane and Rick share share a short conversation about how they should prepare for the winter, where it was asked of on the Talking Dead show after if there would ever be snow in the show. Special effects supervisor Greg Nicotero explained that he would very much like to include a winter theme in the show, but it'd be too complicated to create in terms of using sets with snow and create frozen and icy walkers. But they managed to do it. Quite like that. I love the blizzard. I love the idea of the dead freezing, like zombies kind of just freezing in place. It was certainly a cool and unique and different aspect of the zombie world that we haven't been really shown. And so I enjoyed it quite a bit. So they're stuck in the sanctuary. Obviously it's abandoned. There's nothing there. So they can't stay very long and risk being snowed in with little food or water. So they have to make a decision. They have to trek it out, but they can't go the long way because they'll never make it. They'll freeze to death. So they have to make the hard decision to trek across Alpha's territory to get home faster. Had Rick's bridge been built, they wouldn't have had to do that, but now, but they won't now. They would have to normally take the long way. So luckily they never encounter Alpha or her people, but they do encounter some frozen zombies, which was pretty cool. But nonetheless, they make it to Hilltop. Alexandria, meanwhile, is batting down the hatches as well and trying to survive the blizzard too, as the snow has shut down the solar panels and there's no power. Negan ends up rescuing Judith when she runs off to save Dog, and this earns him favor with Michonne to a degree. So now she appreciates what he did for Judith. Now, in the last season, I said they were going to get Negan back into the fold and somehow working with Rick's people. And I said I wasn't sure about this working because Negan did some pretty messed up things and in my mind was irredeemable. He was truly a villain. As much as I enjoyed his character, he was a likable villain. That's what I'll say. But the show cleverly has made him kind of pay his dues. So, he sat in this jail cell since the end of the war. And likely that's been at least five or more years. And so he's still a protagonist at times. He's kind of egging people on, which is pretty funny. It's always funny to see him kind of mess with Gabriel. But he appears to be kind of a changed man. He's starting to kind of come around. Now, look, does this mean he should be walking free? No, I don't think so. After all, he should be dead. But the show realized quickly with Andrew Lincoln gone or leaving, they don't have a main character to center on. Could it be that Negan eventually takes that role? I don't know. Normally I'd protest, but I like Negan's character so much, I would actually rather watch him screw with Father Gabriel and get set free than anything else. It's so enjoyable. And I'd be curious to see his reaction to the stupid dress up dead people. I know he kind of has an idea of who they are. He's heard about them, but he doesn't really know. I would like to see how he deals with it. The show, they know Negan's a slam dunk character. And the only one that really is interesting anymore in the series, let's just be honest. Daryl is always fun to watch, but he's kind of hit his arc as a character. And unless he gets serious with Carol or someone else, there isn't much more to explore there. That's not to say that Daryl's a bad character. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. He's quite reliable. He's quite the great character. He's a fantastic character, but he's very reliable now. And we can kind of trust to know what how he'll act or what he'll do in a situation. And this is fine, but it's not that interesting after a while. This, like I said, he's hit his arc. Michonne, Eugene, Rosita, Gabriel, the King, and Carol even as well have all kind of hit their character arcs and are now essentially on autopilot. They're necessary to keep the plot going along. You'll kind of know where they're going to stand when something happens. You never know if they're safe or not because nobody's safe on this show, which still it leaves an element of interest, but not enough for it to maintain the show. Because there's very little left that you can do with these characters at this point that hasn't already been done. They've all kind of grown up. You know what I mean? Now, that's not to say they can't be interesting in circumstances. You put them in a certain scene where we kind of know how they may react and how it may play out, but it's still nonetheless interesting. But what makes the show interesting and watchable is watching these characters grow and change with their environment. It's kind of the way good storytelling is. We've seen this so far with basically everyone. Negan is the last interesting character in this situation, and that's why I'm giving this show kind of a pass on this one. Normally, I would say there's no way this dude walks with everybody, but they need something. Negan is still so interesting, and so much fun to watch him interact with everyone else, because you still kind of have no idea what he's going to do. You don't really know what he's going to say. And oftentimes he says some pretty ridiculous things that are just off the wall and pretty funny. And he's a very likable character, and he has room to grow, lots of room to grow. So could it work? Sure. I think it could. Again, you may disagree with me. I understand that a lot of people would say that's too much. There's no way Negan, after all he's done, would ever be, cozied up with Alexandria. But we have to account for the fact that it has been 5 or 6 years. He has been locked up. He has changed his behavior quite a bit. So his jail sentence has rehabilitated him to a certain degree. How much, we don't know, but that makes him interesting, right? That actually brings interest to his character, which we don't really have that with anyone else. So it'll be kind of cool to see how he acts and moves about if he does gain his freedom, and how the others will react around him. Will they approve or disapprove? Overall, I would say this is probably a pretty good season. I don't think it's listen, the Deadhead people are stupid, right? Some of the scenes are stupid, but overall, it's actually not a bad season. It's far better than the last one. That's for damn sure. And I think the show is finally heading in a much better direction than I would have thought it was going to head into. At the end of season 8, I had really no clue what the heck to expect. And with Rick leaving the show, I definitely had no idea what they were going to do or how they were going to make this work. The first 4 or 5 episodes were definitely my favorite, as I found that all the communities kind of trying to work together was a new and interesting story that we really haven't had a chance to get into. I'm in no way a fan of these whisperers or whatever the hell they're called. I think it's cheesy. Again, it's over the top. It's stupid. I don't like these villains. They're just, in any situation, they would have been eradicated immediately. The wolves, to me, are more of a threat than these people. And the wolves got like they got like little bits in episodes, but they were taken out in essentially one episode. I think the communities should make quick work of them in theory, but I have a feeling that the show's writers will probably make a way for them to struggle against them somehow. Probably won't make a lot of sense to us as the viewer, and it may seem way too convenient at times, but that's what happens when you create villains that in any real world situation would not be hard to be taken out. But we'll see. Maybe it'll end up being really good. The season, again, was much better than I was expecting. And lo and behold, rated higher than last season too. So this rated much higher in terms of episodes per episode than the season prior to that. I do find it interesting too. It's kind of a sidebar note. I think it's interesting that the show's writers were so quick to kill off so many main characters this season. I mean, we lost a lot. We lost Jesus, Tara, Enid, Henry, technically. You include Henry in that. But that's like all 4 of these people are dead. Especially when it seemed like everyone was invincible last season during what was a major war between a very powerful opponent. If only they had been this capable last season, it may have been more interesting. I think that's the problem with season 8 was that there didn't seem to be there wasn't a whole lot of risk versus award in season 8. It was very stale. And so nobody really ever felt threatened. And when you look back at it, you just kind of go, yeah, you're just kind of like, meh, whatever, I guess. You know what I mean? Had they been more flexible with getting rid of potentially main characters, like A characters, B characters, instead of just killing off C characters that nobody really cares about, it would have been probably a much more interesting and powerful and dynamic season, but it wasn't. Like I said, it just was flat. A lot of buildup, no reward. I did hear some rumors too. So Jesus died. And I watched that scene and I'm like, whoa, Jesus is dead. Like that was shocking to me. I was very surprised when Jesus got killed. Especially like in the way that he did, because it didn't feel like he had to die there. Like when characters die in shows, you tend to go, oh, like it's horrible, right? You're like, oh man. And especially if you like that character. I'm indifferent to Jesus, but like you'll feel emotion based off how much you're invested into that character. But either way, like when you look at it, you go, yeah, okay, I get it. So it's fine. Like you accept the fact that that was a scene they were going to die in after the fact. But like when you see this, you go, why did they kill Jesus off? Like it didn't seem like they had to do that. Like it didn't even seem like it made sense to do that but from what I've heard, the actor who played him wanted to be done with the show. I guess he was felt like his character was stale or boring and not moving in any meaningful direction. So he kind of got tired of being on the show. So they had him killed off, and it was certainly unexpected and strange when it happened. There's no doubt about it. I think overall, it's safe to say that this show is reaching its end. And not because I know there's only 2 seasons left, but because it's simply heading toward a dead end. There's only so much you can do with this story at this point that hasn't or won't already be done. And that's okay. Most really good shows only last about 6 or 8 seasons. It's very rare when they go beyond that because oftentimes the story just doesn't allow it. And it's not because of bad writing. It's not because someone did something wrong. It's just the way things, some stories with characters can only go so far before you're just kind of repeating what's already been done. And needless to say, The Walking Dead, as much as I loved this, I liked this season and enjoyed it, there's a lot of things about this season where you're starting to go, yeah, it's coming to an end and it needs to end. Like don't milk the cow dry, guys. Don't ride this wave all the way back to shore. Get off now. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they wrap this up. It's one of the hardest things for a show to do, especially like shows that have a pretty good following and a legacy. Most end kind of horribly and leave fans with questions or frustrated. But I feel like they could really go full circle and bring this ship home on this one. I think they have an opportunity. And on a strong note, like you began back in season 1. But time will tell. I'm actually looking forward to season 10. I've already started episode 1 and I can say that I enjoyed it completely. I thought it was a good episode. And so you look for part 10 of The Walking Dead next week, probably later next week. And we'll go over that. All in all, like I said, this season, it was good, but there was a lot of bad, but I think there was more good, which is one of the reasons why I enjoyed it. It could mean, and judging off of like episode 1 of season 10, I'm hoping that this show maybe takes a turn and goes into a better direction, but we'll see. I don't like the alpha character. I don't like beta's character as much. These villains just don't work for me. So hopefully they can kind of get past them quickly and find and do something else that's interesting. I think the thing with The Walking Dead is that there's plenty of unexplored territory. For instance, one of the reasons why the first 4 or 5 episodes were so interesting was because we were seeing that all these communities come together, including the sanctuary, which made it even more interesting because you're like, wow, these people have to work with the people they were just fighting. That's very unique. But that was unexplored territory. We've never seen all of these communities come together. Usually all of the communities are fighting each other. You think about the prison. They fought with the only other community, which was Woodbury. And so to have this where we have this massive commune of different communities that come together, there's a lot of material there. You don't have to necessarily be fighting someone or have an enemy to make the show interesting. And oftentimes when shows are starting to reach their end, that's kind of what they keep doing. They keep going back to, well, there's a new enemy. Now there's another enemy. And that becomes exhausting for the viewer. It's like, oh boy, here we go. Because you wonder, because after a while you go, and I think this is one of the reasons why the Sons of Anarchy kind of did better. Now I never finished the Sons of Anarchy. which I regret. I really loved that show when it aired. But the Sons of Anarchy started to get that way, where it's like, oh, there's another enemy. And you feel like, well, you got to the point where you're like, well, they're going to get out of it. They get out of all of it, right? They always win. But the thing is they don't. You know what I mean? And that's that's the curveball, and that's acceptable. And that could be an acceptable thing here in The Walking Dead, where it's like, oh, there's another enemy. And you just think, well, I wonder how they're going to defeat them this time. It's like, no, they don't. Oh, shit. You know what I mean? Because after a while, once you've defeated so many enemies, it just kind of becomes monotonous. And that's usually towards the end of the show's run. But all in all, again, it's good. I liked it. It wasn't bad. And I'm looking forward to doing the part 10. And we're going to be wrapping this thing up real soon, guys. It's like crazy to think we've only got 2 more seasons left. And that's going to be it. So if you've been following me along on this journey, I really, really appreciate it. I know the show's old. You've probably already seen all these episodes. You've watched them a long time ago. Maybe you don't even care. Or maybe you do care because you're just curious to hear what I have to say about it. But I've just been really enjoying doing this special, and I'm looking forward to doing some more. If you know of another show or a movie or something that you would love to hear me do a review on, let me know. You can hit me up, or just let me know your opinions of season 9. Did you like it? Do you like the Deadhead whispering people? Do you think they're a cool enemy? I'd love to know all about it. You can hit me up. You can hit me up at email, davidking.therant@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on social media at The Rant with David King on Instagram and Facebook. You can also hit me up at Twitter with The Real DM King, or The Rant with David King. And yeah, we can talk about it there. I listen, if you comment, I respond. I am not one of those people that just ignore you. So again, thank you guys so much for listening, for following along. I've been getting a tremendous amount of downloads. There's been an uptick. The interview with Laura did really, really well. And I appreciate that for all of you who've listened to that. If you haven't heard the interview with Laura Balance, I suggest you go. You might get something out of it. I certainly did. It was fun, and I can't wait to get her back on the show again. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I look forward to hitting you up. We got another show coming up later this week, probably tomorrow, January 6th. News breaking. Tucker Carlson dropped a bunch of videos on that, so I want to talk about that. So look for that episode probably tomorrow or Saturday. Depends on the way the schedule goes, but just keep your eye out for that. And as always, everyone, go rate and review. If you love the show, tell a friend. Costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great evening. Bye now.